I watched my father tear up the acceptance letter to MIT like it was junk mail. The paper that represented 4 years of perfect grades, countless sleepless nights, and every extracurricular activity I could squeeze into my schedule fluttered to the kitchen floor in pieces. Education is wasted on girls, Dad said, pulling out his checkbook with the kind of satisfaction reserved for people who believe they're doing something noble. He wrote out a check for $50,000, my entire college fund that I'd been contributing to since I was 14 with babysitting money and summer jobs. He handed the check to my brother Trevor, who was lounging at the kitchen table in his pajamas at 2 p.m., playing games on his phone. Use it for the honeymoon, son. Bora Bora, like Melissa wants. Mom nodded approvingly from her position by the coffee maker, still in her tennis outfit from the country club. You can marry rich instead, Aria. Much easier than all this studying nonsense. Trevor grinned and kissed the check like it was a winning lottery ticket. Thanks, Dad. Melissa's going to flip when she sees the resort I can book now. I stood there in my MIT sweatshirt, the one I bought with my own money after getting my acceptance, and smiled. Actually smiled. Because in that moment, watching my family celebrate stealing my future to fund my brother's third honeymoon destination change, something crystallized in my mind. They thought they were ending my story. They had no idea they were just giving me the perfect opening chapter. That's wonderful, I said sweetly. I'm so happy for you both. Everyone looked surprised at my calm reaction. They'd been braced for tears, arguments, maybe even begging. Mom actually looked disappointed, like she'd been looking forward to a dramatic scene she could use as evidence of my emotional instability. See, Dad said, looking pleased. This is what maturity looks like. Understanding that family comes first. Absolutely, I agreed. Family should always come first. That night, I sat in my room and opened my laptop. But instead of crying over my destroyed MIT dreams, I started researching. Not colleges, I was done asking permission for my education. I was researching my family's finances, their businesses, their secrets, and what I found was fascinating. Dad owned 3 auto dealerships and loved to brag about his success at every barbecue and family gathering. What he didn't love to talk about was how that success was built on a foundation of lies, tax evasion, and insurance fraud that would make the IRS very interested if they knew where to look. Trevor worked for Dad as a sales manager, which apparently meant showing up when he felt like it and taking credit for deals other people closed. His salary was double what the actual top salesman made, and somehow he'd never been written up for the customer complaints that followed him around like a bad smell. Mom ran the family finances and had been very creative with their tax returns, claiming business expenses for personal trips, fake charitable donations, and dependents that didn't exist. She'd also been skimming from the dealership's petty cash for years, thinking Dad wouldn't notice because he trusted her completely. And then there was Melissa, Trevor's fiancée, who had no idea she was marrying into a family that was one audit away from federal prison. I spent 3 days gathering evidence, downloading bank statements from the shared family computer, photographing documents Dad left lying around his home office, and recording conversations with my phone tucked in my pocket. By Thursday, I had enough evidence to destroy them all. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. First, I had some phone calls to make. Hi, Mrs. Patterson. This is Aria Blackwell. I babysit for you sometimes. Yes, I'm calling because I heard you mentioning you needed help with your business accounting, and I've been doing bookkeeping for my father's dealerships for 2 years now. I'd love to help out. I spent the weekend calling every family friend who owned a business, offering my services as a bookkeeper, administrative assistant, or general office help. By Monday, I have 4 part-time jobs lined up and a plan that would make my parents' little theft look like pocket change in comparison. Tuesday morning, I knock on Dad's office door at the dealership. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said about family coming first. You're absolutely right. He looked up from his computer, surprised but pleased. I'm glad you're seeing reasons, sweetheart. I want to help more with the business. Learn from you. Maybe I could take over some of Mom's bookkeeping duties. Give her more time for her tennis and charity work. Dad's face lit up. This was exactly what he wanted, his daughter embracing traditional roles, supporting the family business instead of chasing silly dreams about engineering degrees. That's a wonderful idea, Aria. Your mother will be so pleased. Within a week, I had access to everything. Bank accounts, tax files, customer databases, supplier contracts. I absorbed it all like a sponge, learning not just how the business worked, but how it could work better. The first thing I did was fix their inventory management system, which had been losing them thousands of dollars in misplaced parts and double orders. The second thing I did was streamline their customer service process, which immediately reduced complaints by 60%. Dad was so impressed he started bragging about me to his golf buddies. "My daughter's got a real head for business," he'd say. "Maybe college would have been wasted on her after all." Meanwhile, Trevor was planning his wedding and spending my college money on increasingly ridiculous expenses. A $3,000 cake, a $5,000 photographer, a $10,000 dress for Melissa that she planned to wear once. Every credit card statement that crossed my desk was another nail in his coffin. 3 weeks into my new role, I made my first real move. "Dad," I said, walking into his office with a concerned expression, "I found some discrepancies in the books that I think you should see." I showed him printouts that highlighted every fraudulent expense, every skim dollar, every lie Mom had told the IRS. But I presented it like I was trying to help fix honest mistakes. "I'm sure it's just confusion," I said innocently, "but we should probably clean this up before the next tax season." Dad's face went white as he realized what he was looking at. "Your mother handles all this." "I know. Should I ask her about it?" "No," he said quickly. "No, let me talk to her first." That night, I heard them arguing for hours. Mom crying, Dad shouting, both of them trying to figure out how to fix 15 years of financial crimes before someone noticed. But I wasn't done. The next morning, I walked into Trevor's office, which was really just Dad's old storage room with a desk shoved in it. "Hey, big brother. I've been looking at the sales reports and I noticed something interesting." I showed him documentation of every sale he claimed credit for, every commission he'd stolen, every customer he'd alienated with his laziness and arrogance. I'd even found security footage of him sleeping at his desk during business hours. "The thing is," I said, sitting on the edge of his desk, "Melissa's family is really big on work ethic, aren't they? Her dad built his construction business from nothing, worked his way up from laying concrete." Trevor's face went pale. "What do you want?" "Want? I don't want anything. I'm just looking out for family." I smiled. "But if Melissa's dad knew that his future son-in-law was basically stealing money from his own father's business, that might cause some problems, don't you think? You wouldn't tell them?" "Of course not. We're family." I paused. "As long as family continues to come first." The wedding was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks of Trevor sweating every time I walked into a room, 3 weeks of Mom jumping every time the phone rang, 3 weeks of Dad looking at me like he couldn't figure out if I was his salvation or his destruction. I was both. 2 days before the wedding, I made my final play. I called a family meeting in Dad's office after hours. All 3 of them sat there looking nervous while I stood behind Dad's desk with a folder in my hands. "I've been thinking about family loyalty," I began. "About how important it is to take care of each other." They all nodded, probably thinking I was about to forgive them, maybe even thank them for teaching me such valuable lessons. That's why I wanted to share some exciting news with you before anyone else finds out. I opened the folder and pulled out a letter. I've been accepted to Stanford's business program with a full academic scholarship, full ride, including room and board. Dad's jaw dropped. "But you didn't apply to Stanford." "Actually, I did. Along with Berkeley, UCLA, and USC. Turns out, when you can document significant business experience and show real improvements to a family company's bottom line, admissions committees get very interested." I pulled out more papers. "I've also been offered a position with Morrison and Associates. That's the accounting firm that handles most of the big businesses in town. They want me to work part-time while I'm in school and full-time during summers." Mom found her voice. But you don't need college now. You're already working for us." "About that." I smiled. "I've actually decided to move on. But don't worry, I've trained my replacement." I gestured toward the door, where a middle-aged woman in a business suit was waiting. "This is Margaret Chen from the IRS. She specializes in small business compliance and family-owned companies." The color drained from all 3 faces simultaneously. Margaret and I met when I was researching proper bookkeeping procedures. Such a nice woman. So helpful when I had questions about things like proper expense reporting, dependent claims, cash management. Dad stood up so fast his chair fell over. Aria, what have you done? I've ensured that this family business operates with complete integrity from now on. Margaret's going to help you file amended tax returns for the past 5 years and set up proper procedures going forward. Margaret stepped into the room with a briefcase and a sympathetic smile. Don't worry, folks. These things happen in family businesses all the time. Most of it can be fixed with proper documentation and penalty payments. Penalty payments? Trevor's voice cracked. Usually around 50% of the underpaid taxes, plus interest, Margaret said cheerfully. But Mr. Blackwell, your daughter has been so helpful in organizing everything. This could have been much worse if we discovered it during a random audit. I gathered my things and headed for the door. Oh, and Trevor, you might want to call Melissa's parents. Explain about the penalty payments before the wedding. Just so there are no surprises when you have to cancel the Bora Bora honeymoon. I paused at the door and looked back at my family, really looked at them. Dad slumped in his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. Mom clutching her purse like it could protect her from what was coming. Trevor staring at his phone like he was trying to figure out how to explain this to his fiancée. You were right, Dad, I said softly. Family should come first. That's why I made sure our family business will survive this scandal and continue to employ the 12 people who depend on us for their livelihoods. That's why I documented everything properly so you'll avoid criminal charges. That's why I'm going to college to learn how to build something legitimate instead of just inheriting something crooked. I smiled one last time. Education isn't wasted on girls. But $50,000 honeymoons probably are. 6 months later, I was sitting in my Stanford dorm room when Trevor called. The wedding had been postponed indefinitely, not because of the money, though that was part of it, but because Melissa had decided she needed to reevaluate her priorities after learning about the family business practices. The penalties wiped out most of our savings, Trevor told me. Dad had to take out a loan to keep the dealerships running. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. I'd never wanted to destroy them just to make them understand that actions have consequences. Are you happy at Stanford? I looked around my room, at my engineering textbooks, at the photos of my new friends, at the acceptance letter to the summer internship program at Tesla that was pinned to my bulletin board. Yeah, I said. I really am. Aria, I'm sorry. About the college fund. About everything. I know. Is there any way, could we maybe start over? As a family. I was quiet for a long moment, watching students walk across the quad outside my window. Young people pursuing their dreams, building their futures, becoming who they were meant to be. Family doesn't steal each other's futures, Trevor, I said finally. But I'm willing to help you build a better one if you're serious about changing. The conversation went on for an hour. We talked about the business, about his relationship with Melissa, about whether he wanted to actually learn how to sell cars or if he was just going through the motions because it was expected. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope. 2 years later, I graduated summa cum laude with degrees in business and engineering. Trevor was in the audience. He'd driven up with Melissa, who he'd won back by actually becoming someone worth dating. Dad was there too, looking proud and a little bewildered by the daughter he'd almost thrown away. Mom didn't come. She'd never quite forgiven me for the IRS situation, even though I probably saved her from prison. Some people, I'd learned, would rather be angry than grateful. After the ceremony, Dad pulled me aside. I owe you an apology, he said, for what I said about education being wasted on girls, for taking your college fund, for not seeing who you really were. Thank you for saying that. Are you going to come back and work for the family business? We could really use someone like you. I smiled and shook my head. I'm starting my own company, Dad. Clean energy solutions for automotive applications. I want to help make the family business and every business more sustainable. He looked confused. You're going to compete with us. I'm going to help you evolve, I corrected. The future of automotive is changing. You can either adapt or get left behind. 5 years later, Blackwell Motors was the first dealership chain in our state to specialize in electric and hybrid vehicles, thanks to a partnership with my company, Green Drive Solutions. Trevor had become a legitimately good salesman who actually cared about helping customers find the right car for their needs. Dad had learned to respect expertise over gender. And me? I was featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine as one of 30 under 30 changing the world. The headline read, From family business to clean energy empire. How one woman turned theft into triumph. I kept a copy of that magazine in my office, right next to the framed photo of my MIT acceptance letter, the one Dad had torn up all those years ago. I taped it back together, piece by piece, as a reminder that some things are worth fighting for. Education, it turned out, was never wasted on anyone willing to fight for it.